Hello and welcome to America in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I am Dan McCaleb, executive editor of the Center Square Newswire service. Joining me again today is Casey Harper, the Center Square's Washington, D.C. bureau chief. Casey, there was a pretty significant hearing in Congress. FBI Director Christopher Wray faced some tough questions from Republican lawmakers, essentially over the law enforcement agency's alleged bias against conservatives and Republicans. You covered this hearing. Tell us about it.
That's right. This is something we've been covering extensively at thecentersquare.com. The FBI has a series of missteps, what you could call bad behavior, I would say that really became prominent in the American mind around the 2016 election. Because infamously, Dan, I'm sure you remember just days before, or I guess it was weeks before Hillary and Trump faced off in November, the FBI came out and said they might be investigating Hillary Clinton's emails. Comey said there might be something there. I think in his mind he was diffusing it, but the way he put it actually gave more credence to it just days before the election. And so the FBI was under huge attack for potentially being politicized there. And then there's been a lot of examples of alleged bias against conservatives in particular that we can dig into. But again, the last election, just weeks before President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump were to face off, the Hunter Biden story is about to break. It could influence and sway the whole election. And what happens? Now we know that the FBI pressured social media companies to call this story basically misinformation, disinformation, to censor it and to cast a lot of doubt on it as a conspiracy theory, even though pretty reputable outlets like the New York Post reported it out and have since been validated in their reporting. But if you remember, Dan, the New York Post's Twitter account, for example, was frozen over that story. And we now know that the FBI was largely behind that. So these are the kind of things that Republicans were pointing to when FBI Director Christopher Wray testified before Congress, before the House Judiciary Committee this week. In watching this hearing, a few takeaways were that Republicans are pretty angry, pretty upset about this. And Democrats were willing to defend the FBI, although they would not. I didn't see them really wanting to get into a lot of the weeds of explicitly defending specific examples. There was maybe a little bit of that, but they just pointed to, kind of Trump's wrongdoing and some of the alleged wrongdoing of Trump's associates and how that was investigated. And so Republicans came into the hearing laying out all these examples of, FBI bias. There's a lot of smaller examples about, where parents are called, terrorists, or the way that January 6th rioters were basically tracked down very methodically and very deliberately, whereas, Black Lives Matter rioters seemingly got a free pass, even, so were they really treated equally? But Democrats just made it about Trump and about his wrongdoing. So in some ways that's pretty predictable, but I don't think this investigation to FBI is going away. This is a top priority for Republicans. The more they dig into it, the more they find evidence of this alleged bias. And so I don't think the story is going away.
Just to cite a couple of quick other examples, you had the confidential federal documents found at Trump's Mar-a-Lago home where Trump has been charged with the crime, but at the same time, Biden's home and office had classified documents that were found by the FBI. He was not charged. Former Vice President Mike Pence also had classified documents that he shouldn't have had stored at his home. He was not charged. And then you have the ongoing investigation into Hunter Biden and potential in his international business dealings and potential briberies paid to him and the president by Chinese outlets. Some FBI whistleblowers have said the upper leadership of the FBI has suppressed that investigation. But Wray, on the stand, I'm going to quote from your story here at thecentersquare.com. When pressed, he said, "The idea that I am biased against conservatives seems somewhat insane to me, given my own personal background." Wray apparently is a registered Republican. Casey, did he sound believable there?
It's funny. I read a lot of the mainstream media's reporting on this, and they were very quick to point this out. I could see kind of behind the reporting of some of the major outlets that they really wanted to point out that Christopher Wray was a registered Republican. I did feel it was a relevant enough fact to include in my story, but, I don't think that does much to make any conservative Republicans feel better, because it doesn't actually go against any of the narrative that they already believe, which is the moderate Republicans and the Democratic Party are teamed up against the populist movement within the Republican Party, which is Trump. So the fact that Trump can be, as you laid out, Trump can be charged by the FBI, but Biden, who's a Democrat, and Pence, who you could say represents a more palatable mainstream, though he is pretty socially conservative, he wasn't charged, but Trump is, right? So it just kind of backs it up. I mean, they could easily just say Christopher Wray is like a Mitt Romney Republican who would vote for Trump to be impeached. And so I don't think it did much to change anyone's mind who sees the FBI as pretty biased on this.
Interesting, and I'm sure the conflict between Republicans and the FBI will continue in the future. Listeners can keep up with this story at thecentersquare.com, but we are out of time. For Casey Harper, I'm Dan McCaleb. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe.